Welcome back to the Crypto's Key Conversation. I am so excited to bring you this video. Johnny Deaton just put up a tweet thread that is absolutely massive. This is a huge bombshell, and he's talking about how ETH became the only game in town, pretty much exposing this timeline that we've been talking about. So he has some documents, some video footage of them in their own words. So coming through this, it's going to be a little bit longer than our normal videos, but I think it's so important that we bring this to light and I share this with you. So it says, how ETH became the only game in town. We received a tiny bit more of the Hammond deposition. He sent an email to Joseph Lubin. It says, we don't know which meeting with Lubin the email refers. Notice how Ripple's lawyer asks whether Clayton directed him to reach out to Lubin. So if you come in here, it says, directing your attention to the email you sent to Joseph Lubin that's reflected on the page of Exhibit 17 that ends with 1454. Do you see wrote to Mr. Lubin at 2:06 p.m.? And he says, yes. And the question is, did Chairman Clayton ask you to reach out to Mr. Lubin? Not to my recollection. So coming over here, continuing, he goes, Lubin and Consensus were represented by Clayton's firm Sullivan and Cromwell. Hinman met Lubin at Consensus on December 13, 2017, and the very next day, Matt Corvus, Consensus General Counsel, publicly stated that Consensus was building an alliance with the SEC. After one meeting, So then he puts up this video of digital asset investor I put up. Let's listen in.
Standards about Ethereum technology used in enterprise. And we thought, why don't we do this with best practices in token sales again? So we started a little bit on this with the Coinbase framework last year. And the idea of the Brooklyn project is getting to a place where token sales better protect consumers. So Vinny talked about a couple of things, right? Like transparency in pre-sales, that's a big thing, right? Like no one should have a 10,000% discount. People shouldn't be flipping tokens on consumers. Things like lockups, things like restrictions on trading to reduce the chance of speculation, to reduce harm to consumers. So what we're really focused on there is building an alliance with other blockchain companies, law firms. There's a couple of interesting law schools that are interested. We hope Berkeley's going to get involved as well, and regulators. We've had some talks with some folks at the SEC about this. We've had some talks with folks in other government agencies.
So continuing on here, he says, on April 23rd, 2018, Hinman met again with Lubin and Consensus. And on May 12, 2018, Lubin stated he was making great strides with regulators. 2 weeks later, Lubin claimed he could issue tokens in ways detailed in Hinman's speech, except the speech had not yet occurred. Listen to this. This is crazy.
Let's talk about the conversations you're having with the regulators at the moment. How are you going around? What are the questions you're being asked? What are the key issues that you think you currently face and the challenges to overcome?
Yeah, so we're mostly focused on securities law. We are able to issue investor tokens or tokenized securities. We're also able to issue consumer utility tokens that wouldn't be considered securities, and we're focused on getting very clear definitions and helping regulators around the world understand that there are these networked business models that benefit from membership tokens or tokens that represent consumption of scarce resources. And as long as these projects are selling tokens to token buyers that make use of the token, and they're not selling in large quantities to speculators who are hoping to make money by the actions of others, that is a good, clean definition of a consumer token.
And that's what Ether is.
That is absolutely what Ether is. We did about 7 months of deep legal homework. Ether is a crypto fuel. It's one of the first crypto commodities in the decentralized World Wide Web, Web3. Others are for decentralized storage and bandwidth and heavy compute. On Ethereum, you can do trusted transactions, automated agreements, smart software objects. In order to pay for all the shared resources, you need to pay with some of this crypto fuel. And so that token represents essentially a way of offering these shared resources to the world.
So continuing on here, Johnny Deaton says, on June 5th, 2018, Mike Novogratz, former roommates and close friends with Lubin, states he will bet dimes to donuts the SEC will declare present day ETH not a security. Hinman's speech is 9 days later. Novogratz also predicts SEC will soon pick a token and go after it. So coming down here, we're going to take a listen in on this.
Yeah, there are bigger decisions to make. You know, Bitcoin is, they've already kind of said it's not a security. Okay, but Ethereum they haven't ruled on yet. I bet dimes to donuts. They will say Ethereum probably was a security, but it's not anymore. And they're stuck because they weren't ahead. There is this group of tokens that were issued, probably 2,500 in total, but in reality, probably 200 that matter, that are in this kind of regulatory no man's land. And they got to figure out how to deal with that. And they're working on that right now. My gut feeling is they're going to take out a law firm, they're going to take out a token, they're going to take out some of the promoters of these things, just to say, dudes, you got to play by the rules. But when we're talking to them about going forward in the future, they're very constructive at wanting to see this new innovative way of financing companies, of bringing liquidity and access to markets to the general population that they never had. They're bigger.
So continuing on here, he says, on June 8, 2018, again, Consensus and Lubin met with Hinman. Afterwards, Lubin argued that the market needed the SEC to scare certain projects away. 6 days later, June 14, 2018, Hinman gratuitously gave his speech, putting aside the fundraising, and declared ETH not a security. So let's take a listen into this one.
We have many different projects that are consumer utility tokens and would not be considered securities. Even in this context, at this point in time, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that has been raised by regulators around the world. The SEC has made certain pronouncements about consumer tokens or utility tokens. Early statements were to the effect that all these tokens are probably securities. So the SEC has this dilemma. Other regulators around the world have a dilemma. The problem is that there are a lot of great projects. There are a lot of bad projects, a lot of fraudulent projects, a lot of projects that are selling what could and should be good, well-constructed consumer utility tokens, but they're selling them to investors in enormous quantities and quantities far greater than they could actually use. So they're really selling them as an investment. And so the SEC's opinion, from what we've discerned, is that those things constitute securities. So we have a framework that enables us to sell consumer utility tokens, not in enormous quantities, not with discounts for large investors, not to investors. You essentially have to be a technically accredited token buyer. You have to answer questions, you have to demonstrate that you will use these tokens on these platforms. And so that's a good, clean way to sell a token that represents some sort of access or consumption of a resource on these new business models, these network business models.
Just to quickly interject here for this, he just said that we don't sell them as discount to large investors, but you have Vitalik Buterin literally on video saying, you know, if you get in early and you're taking on that extra risk, you pretty much get double the tokens for the Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin would be a certain amount of Ethereum, but if you get in early, you'll get double. But he's talking about, you know, you don't sell them for for discounts for large investors, which they did that in their ICO, which is crazy. So continuing on here, it says, after Hinman gave his speech, Lubin appeared on the same stage and claimed he wasn't able to read through Bill's entire speech. And he asked whether Hinman spoke about XRP at all. The moderator responded that XRP wasn't mentioned, and Lubin replied, that's interesting. Let's take a listen into this one. It's a quick one.
What do you think's going to happen to Ripple with this new ruling? I don't know the answer to that. I wasn't able to read through Bill's entire speech, and I wasn't here. I don't know if he spoke about XRPs at all.
He didn't specifically mention anything about it.
So that's interesting.
So yeah, I mean, the fact that he named two other things but didn't name that one is certainly something that...
So continuing on here, on June 26, 2018, Lubin told, this is the Domino, he believed Ripple and XRP were massively overvalued. When you watch or listen to many Lubin interviews, you notice XRP is almost always brought up by Lubin or the person conducting the interview. I mean, that's true. All this video footage that we're pulling up, this isn't anything new to us, but just how everything's kind of pieced together in this tweet thread that Johnny Deaton put up. I just wanted to go through it for all of us to really see it all come together. So that's why we're showing it. But he's right, though. When it comes to these interviews, why is Lubin always bringing up XRP or the interviewer? Let's take a listen into this one here.
Ripple.
Ripple?
Overvalued or undervalued?
Oh, I don't want to say anything mean about them.
You don't have to.
Massively overvalued.
Okay. You heard it here, right? Okay. By the way, they're here tomorrow, so if you're going to be around for that panel. All right, speaking up.
All right, so continuing down here, it says, on July 6, 2018, in response to a discussion about why we would be selling unregistered securities to Americans, Lubin said, I drove lots of the legal work. We got a piece of paper in our pocket before we actually launched the token sale. Who is that piece of paper from? So let's take a listen in here.
We were going to token launch it the Tuesday after the event, and some of us realized that we didn't have a secure cold storage hot wallet system, and we didn't really have a website where we're just going to publish an address, and all these people were dropping by the house. It was like 20 or 30 people there at a time, and about 10 people were actually staying there, and they were Bitcoin nouveau riche, and they were going to drop lots of money on the Ethereum project, lots of Bitcoin on the Ethereum project, and everybody knew that Bitcoin was going to go straight to $10,000 a few weeks or months later. And so which islands were we going to buy, and what were we going to do with these hundreds of millions of dollars that people were going to drop on us? So we took a little time to explore those issues, and also the main issue, which we realized was, would we be selling unregistered securities to Americans? And so we took a little pause. It was a 7-month pause. I drove lots of the legal work. We got a piece of paper in our pocket before we actually launched the token sale, and somewhere between that January 2014 and the launch of the token sale about 8 months later, we established here. So we established here because, we were very concerned about what Americans were thinking about this technology. So the cryptocurrency space is actually a few decades old. The decentralized cryptocurrency space it only dates back to Bitcoin, but there were other attempts, and they didn't end well for some of those people, and there were much more intentionally illegal things that didn't end well for other people. But we were worried that we might get lumped in with that. So we're not enthused about establishing in the United States.
So continuing on here, he goes, 2 months after the speech, August 19, 2018, Lubin said, we got a lot of pretty high quality clarity, in my opinion, from the SEC. He also adds that Clayton indicated they wouldn't be grandfathering anybody in that the securities law issues are pretty close to resolved. Lubin also said, I think there are going to be some bad times for some projects going forward. His thesis is that the SEC doesn't want to kill blockchain, and that it will do so entirely through positive statements about Bitcoin and Ethereum only. How does he know? So coming down here, let's listen into this.
See Hinman's comments, but more broadly, do you feel like we're kind of at a place now where we're on the verge of getting some important clarity and regulations in the United States?
I think we've got a lot of pretty high quality clarity, in my opinion. The SEC has been very clear that, I guess Jay Clayton, Commissioner Clayton, indicated that they wouldn't grandfather anybody, that big surprise, they're going to enforce securities law roughly like they have for many decades, and there will be lots of projects that sold securities, unregistered securities, to Americans that have received communications or will receive communications. My thesis is that the SEC doesn't want to kill blockchain for America, and so they have to be very careful
sort of have to thread the messaging needle where they present some positive statements about Bitcoin, about Ethereum, about consumer utility tokens. So I think we're still in that phase where the SEC is communicating that we understand this is something new and it's going to be an incredibly valuable technology, but we also have rules, and all the projects out there need to pay attention to rules that are in place to preserve the sanctity of markets and consumer safety. So I'm pretty comfortable in this country and in various countries around the world that the securities law issues are pretty close to resolved. And I do think that there are going to be some bad times for some projects going forward, but I think that's going to be a very good thing. Getting clarity with respect to regulation is going to really kickstart or re-kickstart the token.
So continuing on here, he says Lubin bragged on behalf of the SEC about the great clarity it was providing to the market. Really? Contrast Lubin's claim of great SEC clarity with Hester Peirce's criticisms regarding the lack of clarity, not just in 2018, but also the lack of clarity that still exists today. On September 17, 2018, Lubin warned of a reckoning coming from the SEC for certain projects. Lubin seems to know a lot of insider information regarding the SEC's intent related to digital assets not associated with Ethereum. Were people trading based on this knowledge? So that's a big question. Let's take a listen into this one.
Nobody at the SEC wants to kill blockchain for America. So they also want to enforce the laws that they've been enforcing effectively for decades, protecting consumers. So they need to take a balanced approach. They need to message things positively, in my opinion. But there's also, I think, going to be even more of a reckoning coming where certain projects obviously sold securities and sold them contrary to securities law.
And Jay Clayton made it clear that nobody was going to be grandfathered. Or...
Yeah, absolutely. So Jay Clayton said that. Bill Hinman, Director of Corporate Finance at the SEC, after they declared Bitcoin sufficiently decentralized so that it's not a security and put Ether in that category as well, the token on Ethereum. In that same set of remarks about Ether, he indicated that the SEC is very aware that there is a new model.
So just quickly looking at this, when Digital Asset Investor had posted this in September, these questions came up of like, why did the SEC give the Ethereum free pass? Who reviewed and helped write the Hinman speech? Who was on those 63 emails that we've been talking about? Where's Hinman's public calendar? Who at the SEC owned Ethereum on June 13, 2018? So a lot of solid questions. We're getting to some answers within those questions, but as time goes on within the case and more starting to be revealed, we'll see. Coming down here, Johnny Deaton continues saying, on October 15, 2018, Lubin said that he escaped ETH being an unregistered security by creating a reality through words. What does that even mean? He is claiming he tricked the SEC by using words and phrases like crypto fuel or utility token. And as you can see from these little interviews that we've been seeing, that's what he keeps talking about: utility, and ether fuel, and yada yada yada. So clearly he's been pushing that narrative to get Ethereum out from under securities laws. So coming down here, Jean continues saying, on January 19, 2019, Lubin said, "We are big friends and fans of the SEC." No bullcrap. He explained how the SEC introduced a new construct called decentralization, and Bitcoin and Ethereum weren't securities, and he pointed out that they have not said the same about other tokens like XRP. Let's take a listen into this one.
So we are big friends and fans of that organization. I think they're really understanding the space well. They are applying this thing called securities law to business in America and other places, as they have done for many decades successfully. They're identifying fraudulent projects. They're identifying obvious transgressions of securities law, but they haven't had a heavy touch, really. They've been gathering information. They've been taking some actions. They've been very clear that they understand there is this new construct, this protocol-based open platform.
So you think they get it?
Yeah, we believe they get it. They've introduced a new construct, decentralization, into their thinking. So in addition to the Howey test, they have this new construct that they're seeing certain things in. So they consider the Bitcoin network and token and issuance mechanisms. They consider the Ethereum network token and issuance mechanisms to be decentralized, and therefore no transactions involving those particular assets are considered to be transactions of securities. They have not said the same thing about other tokens, the Ripple token, for instance, and they were clear that they were going to come out with statements to sort of assess these different tokens, and I believe they've made all the statements about decentralization that they're going to make. And so Bill Hinman, Director of Corporate Finance, has been very clear about what you can do and what you can't do, and decentralization is a new element that they're working with.
So you heard it there. So continuing on here, it says, in the clip above, Lubin claimed to know the SEC wasn't going to find any tokens other than Bitcoin and Ethereum sufficiently decentralized and not a security, and he dropped him in name as a source, which is like, really, bro? So clearly we've been, in our past videos, just recently we were talking about how the SEC has thrown him in under the bus. You know, at first it was his personal opinion, the Ethereum free pass speech, but now they're claiming that it falls under DPP because it was a part of deliberation within the corporate finance sector of the SEC. So it's like just people just throwing his name, you know, under the bus, and him under the bus left and right. So continuing on, he says, why does he keep highlighting that XRP does not have regulatory clarity? Despite boasting ETH was given a pass for being sufficiently decentralized, on September 15, 2019, Lubin and Vitalik Buterin confessed, we needed to put out something that we knew was not scalable. Figure out the developer tooling and the infrastructure that we needed to build. So I've covered this a while ago. We literally had Lubin on film, in his own words, saying how the current Ethereum was thrown out. He's like this, is saying it wasn't scalable, but he says it was like a demo. So literally these investors are so-called, you know, even me, I have Ethereum, but like they're so-called investing in something that he threw out as a demo. So let's take a listen into this.
A higher, more conceptual level, Ethereum 1 you could think of as a prototype. It was an impossible project that got built, and we needed to put out something that we knew wouldn't be scalable. We needed to do that to figure out how to build decentralized applications, figure out the developer tooling and the infrastructure that we needed to build them and deploy them. We needed to figure out whether it's possible to build companies around decentralized applications, because a number of years ago, people just thought, no, it's all code out in the open, the margins would go down to zero, there'd be people copying everybody back and forth, and of course that's not true, because there's so much to building a product and a service in a company outside of the actual pure technology. We needed to build a trust foundation and figure out what we could build on top of that. Turns out we can build a financial plumbing layer.
The concept of launching something that doesn't scale and then rebuilding it as
It
something
scales,
scalable
it
was
scales
in the
somewhat.
initial plans or initial
yeah, we
thinking.
knew it wasn't going to be scalable for sure.
So they put out the prototype. They put out a demo. So continuing down here, it says, on August 5th, 2020, Lubin says, there are only two decentralized protocols sufficiently secure enough and decentralized enough to trust, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Lubin adds, because Bitcoin is too difficult to program for all developers of value tokens, Ethereum is the only game in town. Let's take a listen into this.
Essentially online interest-bearing savings accounts for derivatives, for equity, for bonds, for synthetic financial instruments. May have said insurance already, but prediction market. So all of these elements are realized as protocols, as essentially Lego building block protocols that can be plugged into one another. And pretty much all of them are being developed on Ethereum 1. The reason they're being developed on Ethereum 1 is because if you're going to build applications that hold a tremendous amount of value, you need a very secure foundation. And there are really only two decentralized protocols on the planet right now that are sufficiently secure enough and decentralized enough so that they can be trusted. Those are Bitcoin and Ethereum. And it's very difficult to program on Bitcoin compared to Ethereum. As a result, all of the early developers started building on Ethereum. And once you have all the developers building on Ethereum and all the liquidity in terms of the different value tokens on Ethereum, then it pretty much becomes the only game in town. There's no reason to build a DeFi protocol on some other platform, A, because it's not going to be secure enough, and B, because just nobody's there to do the trading. So even other protocols are building bridges to Ethereum, other protocols like Bitcoin, so that they can participate in this new decentralized financial plumbing layer for the planet.
So before I go on to Johnny Deaton stuff, when Digital Asset Investor had tweeted this October 2021, he hit it on the head right here. It says the plan was to get Bitcoin and ETH out from under securities laws, then stall XRP. So he's talking about Tim Draper's video where he says, remember what Tim Draper said, they'll sue you and get their government buddies after you. And we've all seen that video. If you've been following the Ripple versus SC case, we as an XRP community have been putting that out. Digital Asset Investor has put it out as well. But it's the truth. I mean, we're seeing what Tim Draper said literally play out as we speak. So it continues. It says, it is a complete lie and a word game that somehow ETH is more decentralized than other protocols. Quite evident. So coming over here, if I can get out of here. So continuing on, it says, on August 25th, 2020, Consensus acquired Quorum. Lubin described Quorum's technology as an interbank information network. Really take this in, an interbank information network that's similar to what Swift does, and added that Consensus supports JP Morgan's JPM coin, a direct competitor to Ripple and XRP. So coming down here, we got these two clips right here. We're going to listen into this one really quick.
To take on Swift. What's been the traction like? Who's come on board?
Well, it's interesting as you step back and look at this. If you and I decided we were going to send $10,000 to California today, the fastest way for us to do it would be to drive to the airport and fly it there. That's a crazy thing to think about when you're in the age of the internet and we're used to information on demand. When we think about the customers that have come on board, it's because we're solving that real problem. We're changing the nature of a payment taking days to settle to California to seconds. So we now have well over 100 customers ranging from some of the biggest banks in the world to payment providers to the Western Unions and MoneyGrams, Linlan Pay out of China.
How many banks?
It's over 100. I actually don't know the exact number now. Last time we announced it publicly, we said over 100. We'll probably announce the next one when we get to over 200. We're signing up more than a bank a week now.
Net.
What are they using Quorum for?
So the publicly announced applications are their interbank information network, which has north of 400 financial institutions around the world. And it's essentially a messaging layer, similar to what Swift does. JP Morgan, I believe, has around 4,000 financial institutions in their correspondent banking network. So one could imagine that all of those organizations and perhaps more will eventually end up on IIN. So Consensus is supporting that network. And Consensus is also supporting JPM coin, which is a stable coin solution. So
coming back to Johnny Deaton's thread here. So we watched those two. Now he goes, on October 6, 2020, Lubin admits having a regulatory advantage and claims Bitcoin and Ethereum arrived before regulators were paying attention and we were fortunate, he says, quote, we were fortunate enough to frame our token as a utility token. He says all altcoins are speculatory disadvantaged when compared to ETH. Let's take a listen into this one.
So many ways. Ethereum's early advantage is apparent in so many ways. One is a regulatory advantage in that Ethereum and Bitcoin arrived on the scene before regulators were watching. And so via different mechanisms, we were able to distribute our tokens broadly and equitably, which is critically important for the success of decentralized protocols like this. If you're a great team right now with a great technology, you need, and you have designs on being a layer one protocol, you really need massive decentralization to claim that you're a layer one protocol, to claim that you're a new trust foundation. Otherwise, you're kind of a pretty small platform and potentially corruptible. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to frame our token as a utility token and get the excitement of the community of developers, entrepreneurs, users. A project right now, even if it's excellent, needs to incentivize its community to be excited about the token. And usually the way to do that is to say, hey, this token is going to appreciate by the agency of this group over here. By definition, that's a security. This is Matteo Leibowitz's distribution quadrilemma. It's not my construct. And so regulators are watching. So pretty much all the tokens need to be either introduced into the world in a convoluted fashion or are really just going to be seen as securities so that they can't be distributed broadly and equitably. They are being called VC coins. Oh, sorry, Jamie, or professor coins, and
or worse names than that as well.
So we're going to continue on here. It says, November 20th, 2020, 1 month before the lawsuit, Vitalik tells Brian Armstrong, we are getting rid of proof of work to replace it with one entirely based on proof of stake. Compare how they knew ETH wouldn't scale and require years of additional work with a fully functional XRPL. And he goes, Vitalik explained this transaction depends on ETH users. Abandoning the $50 billion base layer, $50 billion base layer that they knew and love and move to the one we consider better. It's still a leap that people have to take. This requires years of work by Vitalik and his team after June 2018. So let's take a listen into this one here.
So our executive director, and of Ayemi Aguchi, she is definitely kind of a bit behind the scenes more than some of our core developers, but she and Josh, Sina, and our Bastion, and Albert, many of our other kind of ops staff have been doing a very good job of just making that happen and kind of managing this transition where we changed from this kind of small entity that we were back when Ethereum started to this kind of big sprawling thing that's managing a huge amount of relationships and resources. And there's a lot of like minor improvements we want to make that we want to make now that we just couldn't fit into the spec in time. So light client support, some efficiency improvements, some other things. But then there's also sharding, and the other big piece is the piece that we call the merge, or we sometimes call docking, which basically just means taking the entire ETH1 system and actually moving it on top of the ETH2 layer. And so we would basically get rid of proof of work, right? And kind of actually bring the ecosystem back into being this one chain that's entirely based on proof of stake. So that's something that we're excited about, but it'll have to be a bit longer because not only does the merge have to be implemented, but the community has to be confident in the merge process. The community has to be confident in the Ethereum 2 chain itself. And so that will take some time, abandon the $50 billion base layer that they know and love and move to one that we consider better. But it's still a leap that people.
All right, so on May 21st, 2021, Hester Pierce is on a BIS panel with Lubin. Despite 3 years of Lubin cheering how clear the SEC has been, she said the SEC was slow to give guidance, and frankly, we still haven't given guidance. Lubin cheered because him and Speech made the ETH the only game in town. Let's take a listen in.
Right now, one of the key things I'm trying to do is make sure that my agency does pay attention to what's going on in the space. I mean, I am concerned that much has happened in 2017 with the ICOs, is that a lot of activity was happening. We were slow to give guidance, and frankly, we still haven't given guidance, but we were slow to give guidance, and so people did things that potentially implicated the securities laws. Perhaps didn't realize that that was what was going on. Right now, one of the key things I'm trying to do.
I gotta see if I can get it on that that smirk where she says we still haven't given guidance. Let me see. Right there. See that little smirk? She put it right in his lap. Yeah, the guidance isn't there. So continuing on here, Johnny Deaton says July 15, 2021, Lubin described how the infrastructure of his network is still being built out, with a coming hard fork to introduce a proof of stake mechanism that will absorb the existing Ethereum network. The lawsuit versus XRP has been filed 8 months earlier. Ask yourself why. Let's take a listen into this one.
Either December or January. We've done a very good job of upgrading the protocol many times over the years. We actually have an upgrade coming in a couple of weeks called the London hard fork, where we introduced the burning of Ether, essentially turning Ether into a deflationary currency. In December, as you indicated, either December or January, we're going to see the energy consumptive proof of work consensus mechanism replaced by the enormously energy efficient proof of stake mechanism that provides the trust characteristic for the network. That will happen with Ethereum 2, which has been running for quite a while and has many millions of Ether staked in it, in the proof of stake algorithm. That will happen as Ethereum 2 essentially absorbs Ethereum 1. Ethereum 1 will continue to operate unaffected effectively, and it's only the consensus mechanism that will be replaced. So we anticipate it being extremely smooth.
Right. Could you elaborate a bit more on the deflationary characteristic of the London hard fork launch? I mean, how does it go against inflation, especially at a time when that's a major debate right now?
Sure. So inflation in the cryptocurrency sense refers to monetary inflation, the issuance of new cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrencies need to issue new cryptocurrency in order to incentivize validators or miners to process transactions and secure the system. And so we'll continue to do that, but we're moving into a regime in which when transactions are run against the system, bits of Ether will be burned with each transaction, either December or January.
So continuing down here, it says, why did Lubin and Consensus have such access to the SEC? Clayton was asked about conflicts of interest. He agreed he would not vote if a company was represented by his firm. But the same conflict exists if you vote to bring a lawsuit against your client's biggest competitor. Let's take a listen into this one.
I'm not a strategic company that wanted to try to avoid an SEC enforcement action could simply hire Sullivan and Cromwell to represent them before the agency, and then you couldn't vote for enforcement against that company. Is that right, Mr. Clayton?
I'm not sure about that, Senator.
Well, you do know the rule that if they are represented by Sullivan and Cromwell in front of the agency, then you're going to be banned from being able to vote against them.
If they are represented by Sullivan and Cromwell in front of the agency, I would not be able to participate.
That was my point.
Well, you heard it there. So coming down here, it says Clayton, Hinman, and Berger pushed for the case to be filed as they walked out the door. Hinman and Berger returned to their EEA. Clayton's firm brokered the Consensus JPM quorum deal just prior to the lawsuit. Grunkfest, who helped ETH, questioned the motive behind the case. Do you? So this is an awesome thread, and I wanted to end with this, just my kind of thoughts on it, and I wanted to come up here because Johnny Deaton, a digital asset investor, hits it on the head. So it says, how does this guy know how regulators are going to look at other projects going forward? Like, how did Lubin and their party, how were they so, in the pockets or, rubbing shoulders and elbows with these SEC regulators? And then it comes back up to right here. This is it right here for me. And this is something that I've been saying a lot. The plan was to get Bitcoin and Ethereum out from under securities laws, then install XRP it is complete lie in a word game that somehow ETH is more decentralized than other protocols. So let's look at it. The lawsuit was dropped as Clayton and the other members walked out the door, right? They threw the lawsuit at Ripple and went after their two executives, Chris Larson and Brad Garlinghouse, right? Clayton says that going after the executives almost brings more power and significance to the actual lawsuit. So that's why he did that. With that being said, Johnny Deaton had brought it to the surface that because of them going after the executives without, I forgot what's it called, fraud, without, evidence of fraud, he was saying that when the case was filed, the case was over before it was filed, meaning they dropped this lawsuit on Ripple and XRP and they used it as a weapon. And digital asset investors just hit on the head. They used it to stall XRP. Why did they want to stall XRP? Because they're going after the same concept utility use case that XRP can deliver. They want to have a monopoly when it comes to the Ethereum infrastructure and the Ethereum blockchain. All his interviews, that's what he's been talking about, and he's utilizing all these different terminologies to showcase that it's not a security and it's all about infrastructure. And yeah, we threw out a demo and our prototype. Now we're converting over to proof of stake, which is starting to incorporate a deflationary component and yada yada yada. All these things that are very similar to XRP. So clearly they were trying to create a monopoly and they got caught. So now they're all backed in the corner right now with them in their own words and them on video gloating and bragging about the free pass that they got. So that's why the lawsuit was dropped. It was used as a weapon. And quite honestly, it seems like it's working because they've been in this lawsuit for some time. So with that being said, they wanted to slow Ripple and XRP down so they can get that monopoly. Things are getting so spicy when it comes to this Ripple versus SEC case. And I want to thank Johnny Deaton, digital asset investor, James K. Filan, Jeremy Hogan, all parties involved, the XRP community, XRP army, the crypto community that's really been bought into this case because it's truly going to set precedent for our entire industry. We can't let the SEC and this shady behavior and lack of investor protection, we can't let this regulation by enforcement take over the innovation and utility and health and wellness of the crypto economy, the crypto market. It's not just about Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's about all digital assets. And we have to come together as a community and stand up for what's right. We are on the right side of the law. We're on the right side of history. It's just a matter of time for this thing ends. And we have the truth on our side. So we're all good. With all that being said, stay strong out there. Be safe.